Hello, today I am teaming up with Josh, Kevin, and Justin to discuss evolving missions in higher education from the perspectives of a university and community college leader. We basically set out to evaluate how these perspectives reflect broader shifts in higher education. So, our goal is to compare two leadership perspectives, one from a community college administrator and one from a university faculty member and former administrator, to better understand how higher education has changed over time. We want to keep the identities of our participants anonymous, but the community college administrator has over 15 years of experience in both staff and leadership positions. And the university faculty member also has many years of experience in several faculty and leadership positions at different four-year institutions. We asked each of them similar questions focused on the changes that they're seeing in higher education, as well as the challenges that they're seeing today. And as you'll hopefully see, these perspectives were sometimes really similar, but where they differed can reveal a lot about the historical roles of their respective institutions. One of the biggest themes that we saw in both interviews was how higher education has changed over time, and especially recently. Among other things, the community college leader described a shift from top-down decision-making towards a more collaborative, bottom-up approach. COVID was another significant turning point, of course. In addition to many other things, COVID accelerated changes in higher education, like accelerating the shift to online learning. Student engagement has become a greater challenge, with one leader mentioning the need to rethink engagement because of these changes. Both leaders also discussed changing external pressures like funding and governance. These are not new challenges, but they are definitely shaping how institutions make decisions, perhaps in new ways. Another major theme of our discussion was the disconnection between community colleges and universities, or what you could call the transfer pipeline. So both of the leaders we interviewed acknowledged that the connection between the two is weaker than it should be. And by that, I mean universities and community colleges. Students often face challenges when they're trying to transfer credits, and navigating institutional systems where values and expectations can be distinct. The university leader noted that this kind of coordination is a shared responsibility, but the issue is more structural than individual. Higher education is just not a unified system. Institutions are operating in isolation, and this creates barriers for students to try to move between different institutions, regions, and even degree types. Now I'm going to pass it on to Josh. Thanks.
The need to implement artificial intelligence into the universities has been challenged. AI needs to be used as a tool for learning and not as a replacement for learning. This is what has been said by both administrators at the college and university level. And this is also where most students have struggled. Since AI is still being discovered, the state of Texas is mandating colleges and universities to implement how to use AI ethically as a class. The vice president of the community college mentioned that faculty are struggling with student work that keeps getting flagged as AI. So the college is having professors clarify how students were able to get to their final answer and use this as a walkthrough process to affirm how students achieved their goals and replace the flagging of the AI. There have been disadvantages of using AI at the university level. It becomes challenging for students to learn soft skills, team building activities, as well as modeling strategies in STEM education. And the constant use of AI has eliminated critical thinking in the classroom. Part of the solution is to go back to a traditional way of learning with a textbook, a journal, and a pen or pencil. Another challenge that was discussed from the administrator at the university was validating student work. Since many students are receiving online education, the problem then comes down to identifying how students got to their final answer. And the administrator mentioned that they also rely on AI to identify AI technology. So, for example, he mentioned that having to use the AI checker, Turnitin, to check for any AI on ChatGPT. Both administrators at the college and university mentioned that after COVID-19, there have been struggles in the classroom for students, mainly the social interaction between students. One of the biggest challenges today in higher education is the over reliance on technology that has weakened social relationships with students. At the community college level, administration is enforcing professors to implement student-centered engaging activities for students and and encourage more student interaction among peers. The university administrator also mentioned that reliance on social media has also hurt or may hurt students in their job prospects as they begin to publicize their life on social media on Facebook and Instagram, and it may often backfire for students as they may post something that they later regret.
Today, I'm going to discuss some of the topics that we learned and visited about with interviewing our leaders that we talked to. One of the things that they talked about more than anything was access and accessibility. One of the constants that we talked about was the access for community colleges to four-year universities. And my takeaway and what I understood about that was so many of these kids coming out of high school and dual credit, if you will, have the opportunity to graduate high school and be further along, but they're not being accessed as frequently or usefully as they could be, therefore making the connection sometimes just not always there. There's also seemed to be a lack of transparency between the two universities, community colleges and junior colleges, of really what courses can go from your community college, JUCO, all the way to your four-year degrees in universities. The one thing that I think really stood out to me was the community colleges had such a great direct access to the local high school students in the region, and the ability really to tailor their options to their regional demographics to allow for different things and different opportunities, if you will, for these people and these students to progress and go on into higher education. The rigor that was discussed was really, I think, quite honestly, from an internal standpoint, making sure everybody's aware of realistically what classes are going to transfer, what credits will be able to go from one to the other, making it accessible and available for whatever these students may need, may have. You have so many things now that each student needs. Maybe a Sunday morning or Saturday morning class. They have a very limited amount of time, self-learning and not self-taught, but you have to depend on students to do things by themselves. One thing that did stand out that they said was the trades are becoming a higher priority, and kids can go through and come out on the other side with a certification, allowing them to make more money than most of your four-year graduates. Maybe not most of them, but you'll start out on a faster pathway to making more money and having more money and everything else. One thing that they both said was we do need to have more critical thinking activities, controlled assessments, to try to eliminate AI as being a factor of cheating. Both of them said, you know, we need to use it as a tool versus a replacement. So that's kind of what I got from the interviews that we did, and just kind of tried to mimic and understand where they were coming from, what they were thinking, and how to ensure that we do the best to make sure these kids have the ability and the opportunity to progress and go as far as they would like to.
All right, howdy. My name is Kevin Knappich, and I want to talk a little bit about the workforce development aspect that both interviewees were happy to share with us. The first highlight was that higher education must align programs with real workforce needs. In other words, especially at the community college level, we're seeing an emphasis on trade programs like we haven't seen in many, many years. And community colleges are going to be the backbone of that program. Many already are, but we need stronger emphasis on those programs and support from those within other areas of higher education. We need expanded internship opportunities to develop those important critical soft skills that many entrants into the workforce are lacking, according to our higher education experts. They both cited that many students coming in don't have that soft skill set and ability to work well in a team or an office or job site environment. They're so focused on themselves and developing their own skills that they've lost that interpersonality and ability to communicate with others around them. Specifically at the community college level, we're seeing a huge emphasis on dual crediting for high school students, as well as early credentialing, looking at certifications, other programs such as that. But a lot of these dual credit and transfer courses are not compatible between community colleges, junior colleges, and four-year institutions. Students are expanding all of their ability to study, their will to go forth into the job market. But then when they get the idea to want to transfer and seek out other opportunities, they lose credits. So we need a standardization of our crediting system to make sure that our programs are aligned. The A&M system does a good job of this by incorporating its sister colleges into this process through Program for Systems Admissions, as well as the Blend Team program and other alternative programs. But we need something that works across university systems, not just within a single system. And then finally, just to wrap everything up, higher education is in a rapid changing world. We must respond to those changes and we must move forward together. Access and accessibility is going to be a common theme and must remain one of the priorities at the forefront. And then finally, barriers are strong, whether it be costs, academic preparation at the high school level, over-reliance on technology, and AI abuse. But we have the skills to overcome them, and we must have the courage to overcome them. And then finally, the most effective future will be one that combines innovation and inclusion together. We must prepare our students effectively. We must support them while they're in our institutions. And then we must praise them for the successes they have and set them up for those successes. Thank you very much. And I appreciate you listening to our presentation as we shared a comparison between community and universities.